Now, what does he mean there?
Well, number one, he teaches us that that never was a real serpent.
It was not a real serpent
that went into the garden.
What was it?
But as you know, the Bible is written in symbols and parables, and this serpent or snake is a symbol that's used to hide the real identity of the one whom that actually was.
Well, who was it?
The white man.
Now, is this your standard teaching?
Yes. He teaches us that the black man by nature is divine.
Now, does this mean that the white man by nature is evil?
By nature, he is other than divine.
Well, now, does this mean that he's evil? Can he do good?
By nature, he is evil.
He cannot do good.
History is best qualified to reward all research, and we don't have any historic example where we have found that they collectively, as a people, have done good.
Do you teach them what you just said to me, that the white man is a symbol of evil?
You can go to any little Muslim child and ask him where is hell or who is the devil, and he wouldn't tell you that hell is down in the ground or that the devil is something invisible that you can't see. He'll tell you hell is right where he has been catching it, and he'll tell you who the one who is responsible for him having received this hell is the devil.
And he would say that this devil is the white man?
Yes.
Can a white man join your temple?
None have ever joined.
If one came up and attempted to join, would he be allowed to come in and be taught?
No, sir.
Why not?
Well, that's one of the reasons why most people think that Mr. Muhammad teaches hate. But if there is a rattlesnake in the field who has been biting your brothers and your sisters, and you go and tell them that that's a rattlesnake, and all of the harm that has ever come to them has come to them from that particular source, well, then that rattler will think that the warner is teaching hate. He'll go back and tell the other snakes that this man is teaching hate, this man is teaching hate, but it's not hate. It's just that when you study people who have been harmed and discover the source of their injury, the source of all of their defects, and you begin to point out that source, it's not that you hate the source, but your love for your people is so intense, so great, that you must let them know what is wrong with them, what is the cause of their ills. And this is one of the basic factors, I believe, involved when people think, or when the propaganda is put out that Mr. Muhammad teaches hate. He teaches black people to love each other. And our love for each other is so strong, we don't have any room left in our heart. Islam is a natural religion, and it is difficult to find a black body with a white head and classify that body as something that's natural. Most organizations that represent the so-called Negro, usually we find when we study them that though they are supposed to be for us the leadership or the brain power or the political power or whatever power that runs it, usually it's the white man.
How could so few white people rule so many black people? This is the thing you should want to know. How could so few? The white man today will tell you that thousands of years ago, the black man in Africa was living in palaces. The black man in Africa was wearing silk. The black man in Africa was cooking and seasoning his food. The black man in Africa had mastered the arts and the sciences. He knew the course of the stars in the universe before the man up in Europe knew that the earth wasn't flat. Is that right or wrong? Then if the black man in Africa had reached such a high state of civilization so long ago, at a time when the people of Europe were crawling on their all fours, what happened to make these people or enable these people to come out of the cave and come down into our civilization and take it over and hitch us to the cloud? What happened? How did they do it? These are the things you should want to find out before you say hooray, hooray, hooray. Is that right or wrong?
It is knowledge of self that the so-called Negroes lack, which keeps them from enjoying freedom, justice, and equality. This belongs to them divinely as much as it does to other nations of the earth. We are the mighty, the wise, the best, but do not know it. Being without the knowledge, we disgrace ourselves, subjecting ourselves to suffering and shame. We could not get the knowledge of self until the coming of Allah. To know thyself is to know all men, as from us came all, and to us all will return. I must keep warning you that you should give up the white race's name and religion in order to gain success. The days of success are over. Their rule will last only as long as we remain asleep to the knowledge of self. Awake and know that Allah has revealed the truth. Stop believing in something coming to you after you are physically dead. That is untrue, and no one can show any proof of such belief. Again, know that Jesus was only a prophet and cannot hear you pray any more than Moses or any other dead prophet. Know too that this white race was created to be the enemy of the black mankind for 6,000 years, which make their number to be 6. That is not your number or mine. We do not have a number because we have no birth record. Do not let anyone fool you. This is the separation and the war of Armageddon. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back to On the Shoulders of Giants, and happy Monday. We are continuing our reading of Elijah Mohammed's message to the black man in America, and we are picking up on the second chapter, Original Man, which goes from pages 31 to page 67. And knowledge of self, that's where we're starting at. Knowledge of self, knowing who we are, understanding who we are, understanding our greatness, realizing our power, utilizing power, accumulating power. The overall thing that I gather from the reading of this, and you'll see as we go through it, is, main things that we lack knowledge of self. We lack knowledge of self because of the oppression and the enslavement that has happened to us here in America. The white man brought Africans from Africa to over to America, stripped us of our consciousness and who we are, and implanted a foreign consciousness in us, implanted a foreign way of being into us, and we became the slaves, the workers, the labor for white America. That was the consciousness that was put into us. And with that consciousness being put into us, it keeps us in a docile and subservient position, even after being physically freed from slavery, because we were never brought here to flourish. So he's asserting that it is on us to put ourselves in a position of power to be able to flourish. But also he's getting at the nature of the white man. He believes white people are inherently evil. That is Elijah Muhammad's belief, that white people are inherently evil, that white people were created to be evil and through their evil atrocities, because in his mind, the logic is only evil people oppress others. Only evil people oppress others, right? So that's the logic and some of the philosophies that he's getting into. But knowledge of self, self-love, and the understanding of your enemies. Do you really understand your oppressor? Do you? Have you really taken the time to study your oppressor thoroughly? Because if you haven't, you are far behind, and that may be one of the factors that lead to you or others really not gaining the power and the respect that we need. Do we really know our enemies? And another question, do we really know who we are? So let's get into it. So picking up on page 32, first, love yourself. One of the gravest handicaps among the so-called Negroes is that there is no love for self, no love for his or her own kind. This not having love for self is the root cause of hate, disunity, disagreement, quarreling, betraying, stool pigeons, and fighting and killing one another. How can you be loved if you have not love for self? How can you be loved if you have not love for self? And your own nation and dislike being a member of your own, then what nation will trust your love and membership? So if you don't love yourself and your own people, why should other people from other nations love you? Why should people from other nations respect you? If you don't love yourself or your group, trust me, you won't get love or respect from any other group. You say of yourself, I love everybody. This cannot be true. Love for self comes first. The Bible, the book that you claim to believe, says, love the brotherhood. That's the 1 Peter 2:17. Love one another. That's John 15:17. Love of self comes first. The one who loves everybody is the one who does not love anyone. This is the false teachings of the Christians, for the Christians war against Christians. I mean, Islam war against Islam too. So my job is to read this book, but my job is to make sure the information comes across accurate and we giving right information, because you have to make sure we get it right. So yes, Christians did war against Christians, but Muslims also warred against Muslims. Let's not act like that didn't happen too, right? So they have the Bible so twisted by adding in and taking out of the truth that it takes only God or one whom God has given the knowledge of the book to understand it. The Bible puts more stress upon love for thy neighbor than love for the brother. When asked, who is thy neighbor? The answer was contrary and incorrect. Jesus's answer was that of two men who were on a journey. They were not from the same place. One was from Jerusalem. The other was a Samaritan. The Samaritan came to where the man for Jerusalem lay wounded by the robbers who had stripped him of his possessions. The Samaritan showed sympathy for the fellow traveler. He was not a neighbor in the sense of the word. A neighbor can be an enemy. Many enemies live in the same neighborhood of a good neighbor. But the answer that Jesus gave was a futile one, which could be classified as a parable of the so-called Negroes and their slave masters. The so-called Negroes fell into the hands of the slave masters, who have robbed, spoiled, wounded, and killed them. The good Samaritan here would be the Mahdi, God in person, and he is often referred to by the Christians as the second coming of Jesus, or the Son of Man to judge man. This one will befriend the poor, the so-called Negroes, and heal their wounds by pouring into their heads knowledge of self and others, and free them from the yoke of slavery, and kill the slave masters, as Jehovah did in the case of Pharaoh and his people, to free Israel from bondage and the false religion of God's Pharaoh. There are many proofs in the Bible which agree with the above answer. Love yourself and your kind. Let us refrain from doing evil to each other. And let us love each other as brothers, as we are the same flesh and blood. In this way, you and I will not have any trouble in uniting. It is a fool who does not love himself and his people. Your black skin is the best, and never try changing its color. Stay away from intermixing with your slave masters' children. Love yourself and your kind. I cannot agree with that more. We must love ourselves. That's one of the main things that happened to us as they broke us and made us slaves, is they made us hate ourselves. They made whiteness the standard, and blackness became something that we would run from. That's part of that foreign consciousness being implanted into us, right? So they taught us to hate ourselves and everything black. They still do the dog test, and every time they do the dog test, even the little children have learned from such a young age that blackness is not good enough. We must learn to love thyself. This melanin, all this melanin is so beautiful. I don't know about y'all, but how y'all feel about y'all melanin, but if y'all are anywhere in the same mind frame as me, this melanin is so beautiful. Oh, this skin is so beautiful. This nappy hair, it's so great. It's so great. It's so beautiful. My edge gone, but my bald head beautiful too, right? The side hairs that still come in the back, they beautiful too, right? Everything about my blackness, everything about your blackness is beautiful. I 100% agree with that. We must first love thyself. You cannot love anyone else if you don't love yourself. Matter of fact, no other group of people will really trust us to be something viable to them if we're not viable to ourselves. Think about that. Don't be a token. Be respected. And one of the ways that we can get respect is to learn to respect and love ourselves first. We have to relearn how to love ourselves first. We have to get rid of the vacant esteem. Get rid of the vacant esteem and learn to love ourselves as individuals and ourselves as a group. Self-love is the best love. I cannot pour love into you if I don't have love within me. All right. There is much misunderstanding among us because of our inferior knowledge of self. We have been to schools where they do not teach us the knowledge of self. We have been to the schools of our slave masters' children. We have been to their schools and gone as far as they allowed us to go. That was not far enough for us to learn a knowledge of self. The lack of knowledge of self is one of our main handicaps. It blocks us throughout the world. If you were the world and you were a part of the world, you would also turn a man down if he did not know who he actually was. If we, the so-called Negroes, do not know our own selves, how can we be accepted by the people who have a knowledge of self? And that's a great question. If we don't know who we are, how do we expect other people to accept us? But a better question is, how do we expect people to respect us if we don't have knowledge of self? Now, yes, the schools did not teach us who we are, but we must remember the schools were not set up to teach us who we are. If we want to learn who we are through the school systems, through educational systems, they have to be the educational systems that we set up for ourselves. Do for self. It is not our oppressors or slave masters' job to do for us. Why would they do that? It doesn't make sense, but it makes hella sense for us to do it for ourselves. Don't complain. Damn it. Get active. Do for self. Right. Yes. The educational systems were not set up for us. Nope. You're not going to learn knowledge of self in our schools. But if you want to learn knowledge of self, we can learn them in our own schools that we create for our own children. And nowadays, there's so much information that's available. We have no excuse, just like this channel, right? All right. Help self before helping others, right? Many of my people, the so-called Negroes, say we should help the nations of Africa, which are awakening. This has been said as if we owned America. I like that. It's like, hey, we're gonna help Africa. But he's like, hold up, y'all saying that like y'all got like real clout and power over here, right? We are so foolish. What part of America do you have that you can offer toward helping Africa? Who is independent, the nations of Africa or us, right? The best act would be to request the independent governments of Africa and Asia to help us. We are the ones who need help. We have little or nothing to offer as help to others. We should begin to help at home first. And Pat and PC did a show on this maybe over a year ago when we were talking about how we can't help Africa. We can't. We're not a nation ourselves. The best way to help Africa is to become a united nation of people here in America with all of the numbers and the resources that we have here in America. But until we unite and become a people here in America, we can't afford to help anybody else because we can't afford to help ourselves. But if we were to unite and become a united people, become a nation of people, then we can help ourselves and help others. Now, with the full understanding that 100% of Black people, or even the majority of Black people, will not be down with this of us becoming a nation. But if enough of us do it, then we got something. But I agree. We have to help ourselves at home first. Let's become a nation of people here in America first before we go over and trying to lift up other people's nations. Because, I mean, what are we giving them? Scraps? Scraps that we could possibly use for ourselves. We are 20 million strong. Many of the nations today that have their independence and those who are getting their independence are much smaller in number than my people in America. We are dependent on the slave master. And remember, nowadays we're like 40 million strong, right? So we have doubled in size, but we don't have as many people as we could through a lot of the means that we're going to get to later in this chapter. Well, So we do not have 2 feet of earth for our nation of people. You and I here in America are licking the boots of the slave master, begging him for the right of independent people. Yes, we are licking his boots. Sir, let me shine your boots. You have been doing that for approximately 400 years. Today, if one rises up in your midst and says, we should not lick the slave master's boots, we should lick our own boots, you would say, he should be killed. He should be killed because he was teaching us to hate. My people, you are in a dangerous position. And this is what Malcolm X was getting at in the video. Get that fear out of you and stand up for your people. Who are you to not die for your people? Who am I to not die for my people? If I am shot down or cut down today, who is Elijah Mohammad to the 20 million of you? If 1 million of us throw ourselves in the fire for the benefit of the 20 million, the loss will be small compared to the great gain our people will make as a result of that sacrifice, right? Hundreds and thousands of Muslims gave their lives in Pakistan to get their nation's independence. They were successful. The black men in Africa are fighting and dying today in unity for their independence. We sit here like pampered babies. We cannot even stand up on the floor, not to mention taking a chance of crawling out of the door. We are too careful of shedding blood for ourselves. We are willing to shed all of it for the benefit of others. We are willing to shed all of, I am not trying to get you to fight. That is not even necessary. Our unity will win the battle. Not one of us will have to raise a sword. Not one gun will need to be fired. The great cannon that will be fired is our unity. Our unity is the best. Why are you afraid to unite? Why are you afraid to accept Allah and Islam? So the unity. Disunited people have no power. One of the main tactics was the divide and conquer tactic. Willie Lynchism, the divide and conquer tactic, get us to hate ourselves. We can get them Negroes to hate themselves. We can conquer them Negroes. We can do a lot of things if we can get them Negroes to hate themselves, because, you know, it's kind of hard to fight a group of people who are united, right? But if we can get them Negroes to hate themselves, to not by God, I tell you one, George, we can defeat them Negroes. We can kick them Negroes down, right? We'll elevate some of them up to the top. We give some of them Negroes that celebrity status, make some of them Negroes, you know, think that they are equal to us, close to us, you know, let them rub elbows with us, you know. We'll create different classes of Negroes and you know, dividing by skin color, height, you know, booty size, all those different things. We're gonna divide those Negroes and make them continuously fight each other over the smallest little things. And I swear you, George, this thing will last. Those Negroes will never truly be a threat to us unless they learn how to overthrow this mindset that we're putting on them. And if they can learn how to overthrow that, then that'll be dangerous. But I doubt anytime soon enough of them Negroes will find out what they need to do to become powerful, because they can, but they just, you know, we're gonna make sure that we put it in them to not become powerful. And what happened? We are still not a powerful people. All right. What the so-called Negro must do for himself. Men everywhere are seeking unity among themselves. Every race of people want unity with their own kind first, except my people, the so-called Negro in America, right? Because we want to be everybody's friend except our own. Our condition and lack of love for ourselves must be attributed to the slave master. He has been our teacher until the coming of Almighty God, Allah. The slave master has robbed my people of their God, religion, name, language, and culture. The worst kind of crime can be committed amongst us, for we are robbed of our desire to even want to think and do for ourselves. We are often pictured by the slave master as a lazy and trifling people who are without thoughts of advancement. I say, this is a condition which the slave master very clearly wanted and created within and among the so-called Negroes, right? Robert H. Kinzer and Edward Sagarin, in their book, The Negro in American Business, page 81, states that the history of America would be different today if the slaves freed from bondage had been given, in addition to the 3 amendments to the Constitution, the famous 40 acres and a mule. America would be a better, more, the economy would be way better, way better. The slaves instead started not only without land and the money to purchase it, but with few avenues upon to earn and save money. Ownership of producing land is a prime and necessary part of freedom, right? A people cannot exist freely without land, and the so-called Negro in America is evident of that fact. The slave master passed laws limiting the so-called Negro in land ownership, or limiting the areas in which such purchases or even rentals could be made. Are you not left restricted on the poor sections of the slave masters is abandoning throughout America? So, hold up, I got more. My bad. Okay. Again, Mr. Kinzer and Mr. Sagarin gave a hint in their book of the great psychological tragedy of the slave master on his slave that the original that is the original brainwash. On page 84, the authors state that the land sold to the ex-slave was of poor quality and in an inferior location. They state that the so-called Negro faced pressures against his becoming a farm owner and pressure from the white community that he remain a tenant. We encountered credit difficulties, hardships, and repayment of loans and hardship with white executives from whom the loans must be asked. All of this is part of the clever plan to discourage my people from wanting to own and producing land for themselves, to cause a great dislike within them for having anything to do with tilling, cultivating, extracting, and producing for themselves as other free and independent people. It is a shame. This shows you and I what white America is to us, and just why we have not been able to do anything worthwhile for self. They want us to be helpless so they can mistreat us always. We must come together and unite. It is time. So yes, land, 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 land. You must have land. You must own land. You must have land. You must own land. If you don't have land, you don't own land. You're missing assets. You're missing valuable assets. Land is something that humans have fought over since the beginning of time. Land is where you build, like Elijah Muhammad said, land is where you build your nations upon. We don't have land to call our own, and that is a problem. So we must do what we need to do to acquire land of our own. We cannot be the only group of people in the world, or one of the only group of people in the world, without land of our own, without a place to call home, to truly call home, which is truly ours. So that is something that we must acquire, but we must become powerful to acquire that land. We must have land, tangible things, tangible resources, land. I think it was a disgrace for us to be satisfied with only a servant's part. We should and must, as other people, want for ourselves what other civilized nations have. Let us do for ourselves that which we are begging the slave master to do for us. Do not be fooled by the false promise of civil rights and the softening of their language. It is offered to you now to keep you from becoming free of their evil plans. So, your oppressors have no incentive to give us things that will help us, to give us things that would empower us, to give us things that will move us forward. I can't say that enough. I can't stress that enough. Stop looking at our oppressors to give us what we need to empower ourselves. Then they wouldn't be our oppressors anymore. And I know we want them to give us freedom, but freedom isn't just handed out like that. Freedom is taken. All right. So that we have to remember that. Got to get out of our feelings and I want them to do this for me and I want them to do that. No, no, no. You can want all you want. That's why nothing has happened. Nothing has changed because we still out here wanting. Like En Vogue said, never gonna get it, never gonna get it, never gonna get it, never gonna get it. Woo, 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 woo. Unless you do it for self, right? All right. My people should get an education which will benefit their own purpose and not an education adding to the storehouse of their teacher. Let me read that again. My people should get an education which will benefit their own people and not an education adding to the storehouse of their teacher. We need education, but an education which removes us from the shackles of slavery and servitude. Get an education, but not an education that leaves us in an inferior position and without a future. Get an education, but not an education that leaves us looking to the slave master for a job. Education for my people should be where our children are off to themselves for the first 15 to 16 years in classes separated by sex. Then they should seek higher education without the danger of losing respect for self or seeking to lose their identity. No people strive to lose themselves among other people except the so-called American Negroes. This they do because of their lack of knowledge of self. We should acquire an education where our people will become better students than their teachers. Get an education which will make our people produce jobs for self and will make our people willing and able to do and go for self. It is not the goal and aim of many foreign students who are studying in this country. Will not these students return to their own nations and give their people the benefit of their learning? Did not Nkrumah return to Ghana to lead his people to independence with the benefit of learning he acquired here in America and elsewhere? Did not Hastings Banda return to give the benefit of his education to his people who are striving toward freedom and independence in Nassau land? Did not Nnamdi Azikiwe of Nigeria give the benefit of his education to the upliftment and independence of his people? Does not America offer exchange scholarships to smaller, weaker, independent foreign governments so that students will acquire knowledge to aid the people of those countries? Then why wouldn't the goal in education be the same for you and me, right? Why is scorn and abuse directed toward my followers and myself when we say our people should get an education which will aid, benefit, and uplift our people? Any other people would consider it a lasting insult of the worst type to ask them to refrain from helping their people to be independent by contributing the benefit of their knowledge. I mean, it makes sense. It makes perfect sense. The education we get should help to free us. It should solve our problems. Amos Wilson said it, right? Neela Fuller said it. Now you hear Elijah Mohammad saying it, right? The education we receive should help us solve our problems. And because the education that we receive is not helping us solve our problems, that means we are receiving a faulty education. And we continue to receive that faulty education generation after generation after generation after generation. And then we wonder why our overall situation is not changing, because we're not learning who we are and we're not learning to do for self. We're not learning things that we need to learn to do for self. Look, don't do like I did. Don't go to college and get a degree that you really can't use unless you go get like a PhD, knowing that you ain't going to get no PhD. If you're going to go to college for a degree that you can actually come out and get you some real money and live a real life. Then why would you go to college to make $40,000? Why would you go to college for that, right? Don't go to college unless you really have to go to college, right? Go get trades, go get skills, go do things that you can to enhance yourself. The type of education that you receive should be an education that helps you solve your problems. And education is not standard. And education is not just what you receive within the walls of a school. And education is what you receive through life, period. Learning, the pursuit of knowledge. So we need to rethink and redo education and restructure how we educate ourselves and others. What is education, and what does education mean to us? And how have we truly utilized education? Well, we know the answer to that. We haven't really truly utilized it much, because what results have we gotten from our education other than being able to benefit other people? And this is what Elijah Mohammad is saying. If the education you're receiving is only helping you benefit other people, then you are receiving an ass backward education. Right? We must be obsessed with getting the type of education we may use toward the elevation and benefit of our people. When we have such people among us, we must make it possible for them to acquire this wealth, which will be beneficial and useful to us. I'm just saying, if your education ain't talking about nothing, if it ain't beneficial and useful to you, you're wasting your damn time. So you do not have a second thought about this, because you have your mind, eyes, and heart filled with hopes that you may become one of those who did this evil against your parents, and be recognized as a great admirer and lover of these same people who now rehearse the same evil with little audition, the fire holes and the dogs, the burning and the lynching of you and your woman. You are not able at this day and time, 100 years of free slave, to protect yourself and your women from the murderous hands of the children of the murderers of your fathers and mothers 400 years ago. Yeah. Stop trying to be down with the Joneses. Stop trying to be down with the white folk. Stop trying to be accepted by white supremacy, white America. They don't need you. You need you. They don't have to have you. You have to have you. And then trying to become a part of them, we adopt their customs, we adopt their culture, we adopt their habits, we adopt their ways. Now, think about it. When we were young, we could tell the difference between black crimes and white crimes, black behavior and white behavior. Now, we can't tell the difference because we've adopted so many of their customs and culture. But we don't want to admit it. And some of us don't even recognize how much of their customs and culture that we've adopted. Yeah, we might have masked it as our own and intertwined it into what we do, but it's still theirs. That's why we get the results that we get from our so-called culture. Now, we do have culture, but our culture is rooted in white supremacy. And what I mean by that is we got cultural customs and cues from the white supremacists who are around us. You must remember that slave names will keep you a slave in the eyes of the civilized world today. You have seen and recently that Africa and Asia will not honor you or give you any respect as long as you're called by the white man's name. The examples was evident when I took Muhammad Ali, the world's heavyweight champion, out of the white man's name. The name itself made him a servant to the slave, the white man. All Africa and Asia then acclaimed him as to being their champion. This shows you that all previous black men of America who were bestowed with the title of the world's heavyweight champion were only exalting the white man of America, Europe, and Australia. Their people said nothing because they were not theirs and were not enhancing their honor among the people of the world. Just a change of name has given Brother Muhammad Ali a name of honor and a name of praise that will live forever. Its meaning, his people of the near and the far east acclaimed him and laid the red carpet for him among them as a prince. Now, yes, we have been given the names of our slave masters, of white Christian slave masters. But to be honest, Elijah Mohammad is suggesting that we take names of Arab slave masters. So we're going to talk about that. And let's be real. It wasn't Muhammad Ali's name change that made him beloved. It was who he was as a person. And he was champion and regarded as a highly, as a great fighter before the name change as well. So, just because the facts, I mean, you can go look this up. The facts are out there. But let's put some perspective to this too. If you are one of the people who want to change your name, but don't act like you are freeing yourself from one slave master. I mean, from the shackles of slavery altogether, from changing your name from a name that was given to you by the Christian slave masters to changing your name, some Arabic Islamic name. Because the Arabs enslaved our people longer than the Christians. The Arabs have enslaved African people far longer than the Christians have. So adopting an Arabic name is not freeing yourself from the slave masters. It's not. You like Dr. John Henry Clark. Dr. John Henry Clark even talked about this. He talked about this and saying all you're doing is going from one slave master to the next. So we have to be honest about that, put some perspective to it. Now, if you want to change your name, change your name. But remember, changing your name won't. Well, we have once again, be honest. We got enough evidence now to show that changing your name not going to give you power, or not going to give you the consciousness. It's not going to put you in the best position to unite as a people and become powerful. You have to do a far more than changing your name. We know that. We got enough evidence. We got enough people who changed their name and we got nothing out of it. It's still happening today. So, just being real with that. But if you want to change your name, change your name. But let's not act like you're going like you're freeing yourself totally from the shackles of slavery, going from a Christian name to an Arabic name. So, will a free people accept slaves as their equal? Hell no. Hell no. The so-called Negroes must be truly civilized, and the right civilized man has not performed his duty until this is accomplished. However, the so-called Negro is free to receive his or her own if they just will not allow fear and ignorance to stand in their way. We are the only ones stopping us from being who we truly need to be. At this point, we're the only ones stopping us. It has been seen from the little chance that they have had to get a little education. They have shown and proved that they are the original people who are only asleep in a great need of the right civilized man who will perform his duty of awakening them. The so-called Negroes' fear is being deprived of food, clothing, and shelter, and also the usual smile of the white slave masters as children prevents them from seeking the true knowledge of their own nation's civilization. They must drop the slave masters' names and religion, which both which both they have to do and not understand. This means nothing but slavery. Of course, some preachers and politicians who live off the ignorance of their people are opposed to the right civilization of our people. So, yes, we do, and I'm saying we need to be civilized. We need to understand who we are. Going back to knowing who we are, going back to learning who we are, going back to learning to love ourselves, going back to learning to take off the shackles off of our mind, to wake up. Black man must wake up. Black people must wake up. Black people, we are in a stupor as a whole, and we have been in the stupor for a while. But we were put in a stupor intentionally. This is how the white man can maintain his position. White man can maintain his position by empowering his labor class. Nah, man. So it's intentional. The slave mindset, the labor mindset was intentionally placed upon us. So we must intentionally remove it. All of our actions have to be intentional. Just like all of the white man's actions were intentional to put us in this position, all of our actions need to be intentional to get ourselves out of this position. It is an act of intelligence and love for us to accept our own. One will say, what is your own? Number one, our own people own earth, God, and his religion. Islam, the religion of peace, and our own place in the sun. This divine call to us to accept our own makes sense. Everything of life will accept this kind as its own. Why the so-called Negroes refuses to accept his own is because of being made blind, deaf, and dumb to the knowledge of self and kind by the devils when they were babies under slavery. Today, they claim to his same enemy of the fathers and the enemies of all black people upon the face of the earth, because they cannot see any hope for a future for themselves and their own kind of self due to the lack of knowledge of self. They beg the enemy even for friendship, which is like the frog pleading to the snake not to swallow him after the snake has gotten him in his mouth. The black people of America have been swallowed by the slave masters, who are the race of devils, says all-wise God Allah, and now refuse to let us go without hindrance and hold us a prey against the will of Allah in the person of Master Fard Muhammad, who now speaks our deliverance, since our people love the enemy more than God. And that's by design as well. But I love the analogy. They beg the enemy even for friendship, which is like the frog pleading to the snake not to swallow him after the snake has gotten him in his mouth. So we all know that the snake will not let the frog go, because the snake intends to swallow the frog to pleasure himself. Yes, the frog will plead for his life. The frog will say, let me go, let me go. You must let me go. I want to live. Please let me go. Please let me go. But how will that benefit the snake? How will letting the frog go benefit the snake? Because you got to remember, the snake has the frog in his mouth for a reason, because the snake is intending to swallow the frog. So everywhere the white race has gone on our planet, they have either found the original man or a sign that he has been there previously. Allah is proving to the world of black men that the white race actually does not own any part of our planet. They do not actually own it, but they have the power in ruling the planet the way they do because, well, the consciousness that we have. Until we wake up, the white man will be in power. When we decide to do something different, we get different results. I mean, that's just how it is. So one of the first and most important truths that must be established in this day is our identity. This is what our God, whose proper name is Allah, is guiding me to point out to you. My people who are members of the lost and found nation in North America, you, my people who have been robbed of your complete identity for over 400 years, it is not time for you to know who you are after 400 years of submission to the white slave masters of America and their false religion of Christianity. Our true God is not like the spook God of Christianity who demands death for our salvation and redemption. He is offering us freedom, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness on this earth while we live. First, you must be given the names of your forefathers, whose names are the most holy and righteous names of Allah. Again, I repeat that restoring you to your identity is one of the first and most important truths to be established by God himself. We must remember who we truly are now. Who Elijah Muhammad is saying who we truly are, and who I'm saying who we truly are is different. I'm gonna just say that it's different. His belief in who we are and my belief in who we are is not the same. But what we do agree on is we can't believe this white people stuff. That's what we do agree on. And that's why we here, because we both agree that we shouldn't be on this white people stuff. We got to free ourselves from this white people stuff. Now he's saying Islam is the path. And remember, Islam is one of the religions that black people did practice when they got here. Islam had spread throughout West Africa by 1492. So whenever Elijah Muhammad or any other people from the Nation of Islam is talking about Islam being a religion that black people practiced when we got here, that is true. Islam and the African spiritual systems are what the people practiced when they were brought here. So just wanted to point that out. So he says, the white man knows that Islam was our religion. See, the white man knows that Islam was our religion, our civilization, and our way of life before he made us blind, deaf, and dumb to this knowledge. Because, you know, if you do your research, I mean, Mansa Musa Mansa Musa. The famous story of Mansa Musa taking the Hajj to Mecca. This proof of Islam spreading to West Africa. All right. So since I was being brought in chains to the shores of America, our brain power, labor, skills, talent, and wealth have been taken, given, and spent towards building and adding to the civilization of another people. It is time for you and me, the so-called Negroes, to start doing for ourselves. We must not let our children be as we are, beggars of another man for his home, facilities, clothing, food, and the means of providing a living. Man depends on land for the necessities, food and clothing, and shelter for survival. A prime requisite for freedom and independence is having one's own land. There can be no freedom without a people having their own land. The acquisition of land has been the factor for more wars than any other cause. Economists agree that in order for any type of national system, capitalism or communism, democracy or totalitarian, or what have you, to exist and have a degree of dependence, there must be ownership of land. The so-called Negroes are without a state they call their own. We have nothing to show for our more than 310 years of forced slave labor and more than 100 years of our free servitude to our slave masters as children. We were brought here to work. We have worked. We are still workers. Some of us say, what will we do if we do not work for the white man? How will we live? I say, when you are free and independent, you have a job. You have a tremendous task of doing something for self. You have the job of building a civilization for yourself as other free and independent people are doing for themselves, right? As a people, we must become producers and not remain consumers and employers. We must be able to extract raw materials from the earth and manufacture them into something useful for ourselves. This would create jobs and production. We must remember that without land, there is no production. The surplus of what we produce, we would sell. This would develop a field of commerce and trade as other free and independent people whose population is less than that of 20 million, now 40 million so-called Negroes who are dependent in America. We must begin at the cradle and teach our babies that they must do something for self. They must not be like we, their fathers, who look to the slave masters and slave masters as children for all. We must teach our children now with enthusiasm exceeding that which our slave masters use in having our fathers embed the seed of dependency within us. We must stop the process of giving our brain power, labor, and wealth to our slave masters as children. We must eliminate the master-slave relationship. Spoke about this earlier. You can't complain about being oppressed and complain about being slaves and complain about being victims when you don't want to give up the system. It don't mean a thing if you ain't got that swing. So they're getting to talk about the black woman here, right? The woman is man's field to produce his nation. If he does not keep the enemy out of his field, he won't produce a good nation. If we love our vegetable crops, we will go out and turn up the leaves on that vegetable stalk and look carefully for worms that are eating and destroying the vegetables. We will kill that worm, right? Again, we will go out into the cotton field and look for the enemies of our cotton and try to kill that enemy. We study poisons and chemicals of the earth, and we pour these chemicals on the enemies of our crops to keep the enemies from destroying themselves. We love a crop. We love a crop that we can produce every year, every season so well that we will kill every enemy that we find seeking to destroy it. We will even kill one another if we find one out there trying to steal the crop. Is not your woman more valuable than a crop of corn, that crop of cotton, that crop of cabbage, potatoes, beans, tomatoes? How much more valuable is your woman than these crops that you should keep the enemies from destroying the crops? Yet you are not careful about your women. You do not love them. Why? It is because you have allowed visitors to run in and out of your house, thus they have destroyed your love for your woman, and your woman has not the love for you that she should. This is a good sign. Until we learn to love and protect our women, We will never be a fit and recognized people on the earth. The white people here among you will never recognize you until you protect your women. So let's put some historical context behind this. We did not have a chance as black people in America, as black men in America. We did not have a chance to protect our women. Let's put some perspective to it. I agree. We do have to be able to protect our women and our children. I agree with that. But in perspective is we never had a chance to actually protect our women because we were always in the subservient, powerless position behind enemy lines. Now, we're in a better position now to protect our women. But if you're going to be the person who's saying protect our women, then you got to be the person who's protecting our women too. And I'm going to just leave it at that, you know. That's all I'm going to say about that. I'm going to leave it at that because I ain't trying to get nothing stirred up. But we all know the allegations, right? We all know the allegations. And this is not the time to bring it up. But all I'm saying is character-wise, if we're going to talk about it, we got to be about it, right? So, but that goes for all of us, all of us, all of us. So we do have to get to a point as men to where we are powerful enough to protect our women and our children. Right now, we are not in a good position to protect ourselves, our women, and our children. And all of us are vulnerable. And that is not good because our stress levels are constantly high because of it. So we got two choices. We can either choose to remain where we are in subservient positions, being stepped on by our enemies, or we can choose to gain power, become powerful people, and be able to protect ourselves. Are you tired of being stepped on? So, in unity, we can accomplish much. Think of the 40 million of your and my kind putting $1 a year aside for ourselves in the national treasury toward the day of want. Suppose we laid aside $1 every month against the day of want. Look at the millions that we could build up for ourselves within a few years. Suppose all of you who were wealthy would spend your wealth to build up a better and more economic system among your own people. It would do much to aid our people. Do not put your wealth in the taverns and gambling houses and own racehorses and other sports. Then you will not be so easy to push over when the day of want arrives. Yeah. Cooperative economics. That's what that's called. Cooperative economics. Putting our money together and working together. But first, we got to learn how to trust each other. And we got to learn how to be better too, because one of the reasons why black folk don't trust each other because black people be stealing from black people. Did I spill a secret? One of the reasons why black folk don't trust black people with money is because black people be stealing from black people because of the self-hatred that we haven't thrown off yet. So until we get to that point, we're going to struggle with cooperative economics. We boast that we should be recognized as equals. Let us make ourselves equals. We cannot be equal with the master until we own what the master owns. We cannot be equal with the master until we have the freedom the master enjoys. We cannot be equal with the master until we have the education the master has. Then we can say, Master, recognize us as your equal. Today, you are begging the master, the slave masters, his children, for what? You are begging them for a job. You are begging for complete recognition as their equals. Let us be honest with ourselves. According to history, we cannot find where the master made his slave equal until the slave made himself worthy of equality. Ain't got to add none of that. I am with you to go on top. We cannot go on top with weight that is hanging on us. We cannot change the white man with all our faults. We are supposed to be, according to his own teachings, free. We are supposed to have been freed from him approximately over 100 years ago. Have we exercised that freedom? We must answer that we have not availed ourselves of that freedom. If we have not availed ourselves of that freedom, which he says he gave us, why should we think hard of him about the way he treats us? This may be a little hard to swallow. If you ain't got your shit together, why are you complaining about your oppressor still oppressing you? Who cares about your complaints? That's all they are, complaints. That's all we are doing is complaining. Nobody cares about our complaints. Nobody cares about our complaints. If we not going to fix our issues, who else will? Why should anybody else fix our issues? That's a great question. Why should any other group of people give a damn about fixing Black America's issues? How is it beneficial? Now, the group of people who should care the most about fixing Black America's issues is who? Black Americans. The us's and we's. It should be of most importance to us. It should be valuable to us. It should make sense to us. And until it makes sense to us, we're going to be on the bottom. We're going to be the gum on the bottom of the shoe. So the last thing I want to point out is talked about the birth control death plan. So talking about birth control being introduced into the communities and birth control being used to basically keep the population of us stagnant. And birth control also being harmful to the woman's body, but birth control helping to keep the Black population stagnant. The Black population has been stagnant for a while. We've been around 12 to 14% my whole life. How do you be around 12 or 14% for 40 years? That's because of birth control and the stagnation of our population, right? So our people were convinced to use birth control. What we weren't convinced to do is to have self-control, to control ourselves, to modify our behavior. One of the things that drives me crazy when doing HIV/AIDS prevention is you want to push all these pills on these people, but you don't want to change the behavior that causes them to be on the pills. Yeah, we're on birth control, but look at our STD rates. And so babies are not being born because you need numbers. You need numbers. We talked about this. You need numbers. Babies are not being born, but STDs are being passed, and then HIV being passed because the behavior wasn't changed, because the sexual behavior that was passed down was an erroneous sexual behavior that we adopted through slavery and through the breeding systems. And it was never corrected. It was never meant to be corrected as well. So we have to correct our own behavior. Birth control comes with the correction of behavior. Ultimately, it's up to us to do for us. Because don't nobody have to give a damn, because it ain't gonna benefit them anyway. So the second chapter, Message to the Black Man in America by Elijah Mohammad, from pages 31 to 67. Make sure you get your read in. You know, the link to buy your copy of the book is in the description. So make sure you check that out, with also other links to support me. So the third chapter, Islam, it goes from, it's not that long. So Islam goes from pages 68 to 85. So 68 to 85 is Islam, what we'll be reading next. 68 to 85 Islam. But remember, this week we read from page 31 to page 67, Original Man. So make sure you get your reading in. Message to the Black Man in America, Elijah Mohammad. And remember, it is okay to disagree with somebody. It's okay. It's okay. I love y'all. Make sure y'all catch the next video.